In 2002, Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire captivated audiences with Spider-Man and changed superhero cinema forever. In 2004, they did it again with Spider-Man 2, which many consider to be the greatest Spider-Man movie as well as one of the greatest superhero movies period. Then 2007 happened. We never got a Spider-Man 4. Despite the less than stellar reaction to Spider-Man 3, Sony was still set on making a fourth movie in the series, with Raimi still on board to direct this one and possibly a fifth and sixth one. Maybe this was all leading up to a Sinister Six movie, but we'll never know because the whole dang thing got rebooted. Twice. But back when Spider-Man 4 was basically a sure thing happening, what was it going to be about? One of the earliest things we ever heard about this movie was that Raimi wanted to transform the recurring character of Kirk Connors into his comic book namesake of the Lizard. Dylan Baker, the actor who played Connors, also expressed interest in becoming a crazed reptile supervillain scientist. There were also talks that Bruce Campbell, who had a cameo as various characters in each of the previous movies, would have been revealed to be Mysterio the entire time in different disguises, kind of like how Guardians of the Galaxy 2 seemed to imply that all of Stan Lee's cameos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are the same guy. But as the years went on, it became clear who were going to be the starring villains of Spider-Man 4 and who would play them. John Malkovich as the Vulture, and Anne Hathaway as Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat. There is only one full treatment of the movie that I could find available online, and the validity of it is dubious. The story, according to it, is that Spider-Man fights the Vulture, who is secretly Adriano Toomes, the new chief editor of the Daily Bugle after Jameson was fired. Vulture's plan appears to be rob a bunch of places and also create headlines featuring his supervillain persona that would sell him papers. Peter discovers Vulture's true identity around the time he also learns that Toomes is Mary Jane's real father, and Peter tries to convince her that Daddy is a baddie. Electro is also the secondary villain in this version, as a guy working at a place called ElectroCorp that is transformed by nuclear power when Spider-Man and Vulture fight. He's contained in a suit that controls his electricity and agrees to team up with Vulture if he fuels his hunger for power with this capsule that Vulture stole. So Peter reveals to Aunt May that he's Spider-Man, and then Mary Jane breaks up with him and says she's moving to LA. Then Peter, as Spider-Man, teams up with Black Cat, and the two start a very sudden and forced relationship filled with sex. Vulture and Electro kidnap Aunt May, and Black Cat betrays Peter because Vulture is also holding her sister hostage. But Spider-Man frees all the hostages, and he and Black Cat defeat Electro and Vulture. It all ends with Peter giving up being Spider-Man, having refused MJ's offer to get back together. Now, there's a lot about this that seems like it's fake. There's a lot of spelling errors, Vulture is named Adriano Toomes instead of Adrian, as well as a lot of overly stupid stuff in it, like Black Cat distracting Electro by flashing him so Spider-Man can defeat him. But there does appear to be official concept art for Electro for a Spider-Man movie around that time, so at least some of the ideas here could be true, but maybe not the exact story. Another apparent treatment for the plot has it similar to this one, except in this one, MJ and Peter have a son that MJ takes with her when she decides to go to LA. Felicia Hardy is still in this movie as the new love interest, only she's not Black Cat in this one. Peter still gives up being Spider-Man at the end, only this time it's partly because he kills the Vulture and his new girlfriend isn't like that for some reason. A lot of stuff like this was thrown around about the movie. Some say Peter was cheating on Mary Jane with Felicia, there's some that say Felicia becomes a supervillain called the Vultress instead of Black Cat. I remember hearing a rumor that Felicia was going to be the Vulture's daughter at one point, who's avenging the death of her father after Spider-Man kills him, but I can't find any proof of that, so that might be one of those Berenstain-Bear Mandela effect things. While a lot of these supposed treatments and plot summaries seem to corroborate a similar story, the most official word we have about this movie comes from Sam Raimi himself and concept artist Jeffrey Henderson. Apparently, the film would have opened with Spider-Man fighting a montage of B-list supervillains like the Shocker, the Rhino, and Mysterio, who would have been Bruce Campbell. Vulture again would have been the main villain, whom Raimi had wanted to use as a villain in the previous movie, and Felicia Hardy would have been a love interest to replace Mary Jane to some degree. According to Raimi, she would have become the Black Cat and not this Vultress everyone was talking about. Not a lot to go on, but it does seem to corroborate a lot of the could-be fakes I mentioned earlier. So, what happened with all of this? Why didn't Spider-Man 4 ever get made? Well, there are already disagreements between Raimi and the studio after Spider-Man 3, and the rush to get the film up by its projected 2011 release date while still maintaining a quality product was just too much. Raimi apparently went through several different versions of the script and still hated it. And if it was like that first treatment and had Black Cat's Girls Gone Wild audition, who can blame him? When he left the project, Spider-Man 4 died with it. The only hope for the studio was a full reboot, followed by another full reboot. But even though the movie never got made, did Spider-Man 4 have any lasting impact on the franchise at all? Well, like what happens with a lot of unproduced franchise works, the ideas presented for Spider-Man 4 went on to live on in some shape or form. When Sony rebooted Spider-Man with The Amazing Spider-Man, the first villain they chose for the new series was the Lizard, thus somewhat fulfilling Raimi and Dylan Baker's wishes to have the character seen to fruition. It also featured a love interest that was not Mary Jane, so in a way, I guess Amazing Spider-Man was kind of Spider-Man 4, in a weird, roundabout, rebooty way. I mean, when you Google Spider-Man 4, The Amazing Spider-Man is what comes up after all. Vulture would finally crop up as the main antagonist in a movie when the second reboot happened, where he was also, spoilers, secretly the father of Peter's love interest, so maybe some of that fake treatment isn't so BS after all. And Mysterio, after several attempts to get him on film, would be featured in Spider-Man Far From Home, and as of this writing, the movie hasn't been released yet, so it's yet to be confirmed whether he's a villain or not. But come on, it's Mysterio! He's gotta be right. That whole multiverse stuff is just a bunch of comic book trickery, and he's gonna pull off the Gyllenhaal mask and be Bruce Campbell the whole time. Anne Hathaway, although she wouldn't go on to play the Black Cat or Vultress, would apparently have a destiny of playing a cat burglar supervillain love interest when The Dark Knight Rises came out, and she would play Catwoman, who basically is the same character as Black Cat, except Catwoman doesn't try to sleep with a minor. And, fitting as it is a celebration of all Spider-Man incarnations in media, Into the Spider-Verse has its own nod to Spider-Man 4 with Peter B. Parker, aka Dad Bod Spider-Man, whose story involves him being an over-the-hill superhero who has been divorced from Mary Jane. Sound familiar? Apparently they wanted Tobey Maguire to voice him originally, so that would have basically made Spider-Man 4 canon, right?
Give me another chance.
So, why am I suddenly talking about Spider-Man 4, besides the fact that I for some reason like talking about superhero movies that never happened? Well, Marvel recently released a teaser on Twitter that everyone assumed was in reference to them making a comic book adaptation of the unproduced Spider-Man 4. As of this writing, we still have no idea what it's actually about, other than it seems to be a countdown of some kind leading up to a big announcement. And from what it sounds like, it's not gonna be Spider-Man 4. But maybe Marvel could still do something with this in comic form. Maybe Marvel could turn it into a good story, and maybe they could release more comics set in the Raimi Spider-Verse. Just keep out the bit about Black Cat's powers being full frontal nudity, and you'll be good.